Hi, welcome to another video from Exit Strategy. Chismo Eugene. Please like, subscribe, share. Give a thumbs up to this video if you found it helpful, and pass it on if you believe someone else would benefit from it. I'd appreciate that. I want to talk to you guys about getting your rest. Some would say recuperating, but I'll just talk about getting your rest. And when I mean your rest, we're not just talking about sleep. We're not just talking about sitting back, relaxing from your day to day. What I'm speaking of specifically is empaths, chosen ones who have been through narcissistic personality disorder abuse for short periods of time and even long periods of time. 5 years later, although I've had no interactions with the narcissist that I was married to, I'm finally divorced. She sent divorce papers to me earlier in this year, and that was what I was hopeful for, just as I was when I Googled in 2020 what makes a person not show true remorse, and it popped up. And that was the first time, I believe, even looking back, I try to jog my mind to see if it was any chance that I'd heard this word anywhere in the world and throughout my life. And I just gave up, abandoned that thought, because I know that it's possible that this word was thrown around. I just don't recall hearing it. And it was my time, 2020, just as it was a lot of us. So I haven't had that situation where I've had these Hoovers and this and that type of stuff, like a lot of empaths and chosen ones who've been abused by them. Nonetheless, whether I've had that experience or not, I'll tell you something that we all share in common, and it's undeniable, that we struggle, and I don't want to say suffer, but we struggle, whether we admit it or not, from the lingering effects. I call it the stench, the smell, the odor that still belies inside of our spirit, man and woman. Because mentally, what happened was we attached ourselves to these individuals in a meaningful way. And to abandon that type of thought, it's not just something that you can will yourself to do. There's a process. Now, I'm not talking about, well, even maybe some of you may reminisce about some of the things, the moments with them. And I guess subconsciously, that's what we all share in common. Like I say, admitting that this is a real part of it is beneficial for you getting a grasp on it. And so getting your rest is more than just sitting back, relaxing, or getting the proper sleep. That's a part of it. After you've been involved with these people, and not to mention these Hoovers, and if they're coming back and forth, they just can't sit their ass down. They're continually in your life in some way, shape, or form. I didn't have that experience. Nonetheless, we share this in common. We have these subconscious thought processes. We have and not to mention you're awake now. Your consciousness is in overload. Your consciousness is so sharp, depending on how much you're elevating and vibrating. And in my case, I'm so conscious of so many things. Not that I'm willfully walking around looking for things to be conscious of. You just become conscious because you know now, looking at how people move, that most people are just carbon copies of one another. There's rarely originality. There's rarely originality anywhere. Even you and I struggle with originality because we're awake. We're trying to find our way back to us. And so I haven't made a video in probably 2 weeks. I miss being here talking about these things. But I took time to rest. And I'm not talking about just physical rest. That was a big part of it. Not just talking about sleep. I took time, even though I was away from making videos, I took time to focus on little to nothing that regards all things outside of me. And I went internally and just began to just do my USA, if you will. I've been working and doing little hobbies and little small jobs here and there, but I've been taking my time and resting. And I don't know if this is connecting with somebody, but I hope it does, because what I want you to understand is, before you woke up and even though you're awake, we find ourselves still struggling to not do as much as we did before, because we're still doing it. A lot of times we're using it as an outlet to heal, and that can be detrimental as well, because if you're trying to fill your day with things to keep your mind off of whatever it is that you endure, all the losses, all the finances, all the back and forth, all of the things that narcissists took you through, if you're trying to keep those thoughts at bay by filling them with other things, this will in turn exhaust you in another way. And so it's exhaustion of a different form. So what I would encourage you guys to do, recognize first of all that you're becoming exhausted or burnt out in little ways before you get to that point where, because the burnout that I'm talking about is my thinking process. I'm a thinker, and most empaths are. We are thinkers. We're critical thinkers. And now that you're awake, your critical thinking makes perfect sense now. You don't talk yourself out of things that you see, because you see them for what they really are. And this is what causes an overload in just your daily existence. So recognizing when you have these issues, or these things are becoming issues where you just feel sluggish, you feel exhausted, even dehydrated sometimes, you have to recognize this. And you don't always recognize it in the beginning. And the isolation that most of us empaths are experiencing right now is a beautiful thing. And it would be nice if you could talk to people about not so much this newfound information, but just to enlighten them on some of the fundamentals of what they're enduring, how they're going about their day-to-day life, how they're expending so much of their energy and existence and their presence on someone else and in someone else's life, only to get bits and pieces of that same energy back. We do this both consciously and unconsciously. Even with my customers, I have discovered with me resting now. And thank God my phone doesn't blow up like that, but it does ring more than I want it to. And I'm doing things more or less by myself. My twins help me here and there, because I want to teach them different things about holy culture and, landscaping, excavation, just basically working with these. They're smart kids academically, but I want them to be able to work with their hands. I think if you could work with your hand in conjunction with your mind, it makes you a powerful human being. And so be a thinker, tinkerer. Even if the ideas seems weird and preposterous to other people, be a tinkerer. If you can think something, tinker around with it and see if you can bring it into fruition. That's my philosophy on that. But I found that me taking this rest in whatever ways that I took it, meaning just mentally willed myself to think a little less, and to do a little less, because being that I was able to think a little less about things, meaning what I have to do. That's where I'm going. What I have to do. This is an intense thought process with Chosen Ones and Impel. We constantly, and now on top of being awake, this is more that's added to our plate in a good way. But nonetheless, it can be overwhelming without you even knowing it and realizing it. And so recognizing it and taking that time away, because I know a lot of us feel compelled, we feel obligated to come here and show our face, because it's like this is a friend circle unlike any other on earth, and people are expecting us. People are delighted to see us in one way or another, for the most part, because it's genuine here. And when people don't see us, they wonder, has he fallen off? Has she fallen off? Have they went back to their vomit? Have they went back to that narcissist? And a lot of times it's none of the sort. It is just being overwhelmed and burnt out a lot of times and exhausted over this new awakened state. It kind of puts life right back at square one, because we're beginning to have to live a whole new life from scratch. At least that's been my experience. And it's not all bad, like I say, but being able to pretty much have to start over in life, not just the physical finances and different things, but in the whole idea of what we knew before, now having to establish our life and lifestyle all anew. It is very I don't say interesting, it is very uncertain, because the people, places, and things are different. They're not perceived the same way. Nothing ever will be. And this is not to sound negative or sad. It is just the reality of what we need to cope with. We need to recognize it and just push through it, because life begins to be better than it ever was before. But it is very, very intense at times. And recognizing that it is this way means you just have to take a break and take some rest. Because never, ever compromise you again. Because when you compromise you are allowing someone else and you're granting them permission to do whatever they damn well please. And like I say, customers, in a lot of cases, I noticed that, because I'm just there for the customer and I try to do the best job that I can. And if you take pride and you're proud of what you do for people, if you have businesses, and if you have a customer service job that you do, and you take pride in that, sometimes you hold yourself to a standard that's unrealistic even for you, because you won't get time back, understandably, good or bad. So when you go over that threshold of doing too much, oftentimes by the time you recognize you need that rest, you can end up in a pickle. So just progressively do things that you have to do in life. You have time. So take time for yourself. Rest in the appropriate way, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, physically, academically, and socially. You don't always have to tell people what you're doing when you're doing it. I just figured it was very important to let you guys know that this has been the case the last couple of weeks, and I've slept in for a few hours longer than I normally have. I still am going to sleep at 12:01 a.m. in the morning for some reason. I know I should be in bed and sleeping by 9, 10 o'clock. Most of the time I'm just doodling on my phone, Facebook Marketplace. That's my little pet peeve. And of course, YouTube, watching YouTube programs or not programs, programs as it relates to, like last night, I was watching a lot of the military jets and stuff, the strategic abilities of these type of things. I'm just curious of that kind of stuff. And so this can go from one documentary to another. Before you know it, 2 hours, 3 hours. And so I shut the TV off around 1, and I woke up around 7:45, and I just slept for another hour. And that extra hour did great things for me. And so this is a pattern I'm changing, because my body is becoming more settled and my mind's becoming more settled. But in a sense, I find myself having to stop moving in the way that I did before, because a lot of it was unnecessary and it was needless, and that in essence was what was taxing on me. And so if this benefits you in any way, guys, leave a comment. Again, before I leave, you just have to recognize this before it gets to that point. And for me, I recognized it, and I just did little things, practical things that I thought were appropriate for me to kind of get my zen back, to get my bearings back, and to feel a little more refreshed. Simple as that. Because this atrocious abuse is unlike anything you will ever experience on earth. So keep that in mind. That being said, bless.